is Gail Peeden.
All right. And you are here because you competed in the Soapbox Derby here in High Point.
That's correct.
Yes. So how did you get involved with the High Point Soapbox Derby?
It was kind of a family and friend thing. We had friends whose sons were in it, and then my brother was in it. And then the year that they allowed girls, we decided that I would try it too. Mm-hmm. It was really a family tradition at that point.
Who had done it before in your family?
My brother Jeff won 2 years before I did, and yeah, and then my girls, I think, we may go into that a little bit, but my girls did it in the 90s, and my nephew.
So describe your car.
Wow. Okay, so it was what was called a lay-down model at that point, and it was made out of fiberglass, so we had a big huge mold that we made out of styrofoam and then fiberglassed around it, and then took the mold out of it, or the styrofoam out of it, and it's painted pink, had a pink elephant on it, and I laid down. So prior to that, people sat up in their cars, but I lay down in the car. And so when you do that, you actually have a cover that comes right here, your helmet's here, so you basically, this is your field of vision going down the hill. So that was one of the newer things that they were doing at that point, because a lot of it had to do with, and I think these were the years that finally, or maybe not even finally, but the years that people were figuring out what was aerodynamic and that's when it started to get kind of serious as far as design and speed and how that connects to each other.
How did that feel, going down, laying down?
It was fun. It was cool. In the beginning, I was a little fearful, but then after a while, it was really a lot of fun.
Did you have a sponsor?
We didn't have sponsors locally.
No. Okay.
We did not.
So when you entered, were you aware that girls had just been allowed to race the year before? And were there other girls that were racing in High Point that year?
I was aware, and there were not, because we were so heavily involved in it, because even the year my brother didn't go, we went with another family. So I think we went like 6 years. So we were pretty savvy to what was going on with the Soapbox Derby at that time.
So how did that feel,
it was pretty awesome. Yeah. I think I mentioned to you, I was the queen the year before. And then, raced the following year, so it's kind of like went from crown to helmet or whatever. But, yeah, it was a lot of fun. We enjoyed it every year.
That's great. And there were other girls that were racing?
No, not there. They were in Akron, but not here locally.
Okay. Okay. So what do you remember about race day? Like, start from the morning.
There's the anticipation of just the whole day. Obviously, it's very exciting. You come in, they weigh your car. You do what they call practice heat, and I don't know at this point what the speed was when we went down the hill. Probably not more than 20 miles an hour. When you get to Akron, obviously that hill is a lot bigger, so you go a lot faster. But race day was just a whole lot of coming in. Everything is actually looked at, make sure you don't have anything going on in your car that they may deem illegal, because they had all these rules and stuff. So you had an inspection per se. And everything had to weigh 250, the car and you combined. So if you were over 250, you would have to figure out a way to get that weight out of your car. So anyway, yeah, that was the total weight, which is a big deal, kind of to get back to the aerodynamics and stuff. Weight position in these cars, do you want the weight in the back? Do you want it in the front? There was just a whole lot of semantics that went with these cars as the years went through.
Do you remember the year that you raced of, people having to take stuff out of their car, and like what would they do?
Right. Now, not here locally, but in Akron, yes. I mean, up there, it was a really big deal as far as inspection morning. There was like a whole row of people. You came through, you were not only weighed, you were interviewed about how the car was built, and, they wanted to make sure that somebody didn't build it and you just showed up and, rode in it. But what would happen as far as weight, people put lead in these cars, because the car and you may not weigh 250 pounds, so they'd get lead and like buckle it into the back or bolt it in. So if they were overweight up there, sometimes they had to literally pull weight out, take some of the lead out of the car. So it was very strict.
Yeah. Sounds like it would take a while too to get through.
Yeah,
all
well,
those.
it was bolted in.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so
Okay.
they literally were unbolting it.
And so this was the last year that the Derby was held in High Point.
Correct.
Did you have an idea at the time that it was the last year? Was there any kind of
did not
feeling?
know.
No. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm not sure I can't remember well enough. I wish my dad were still around, he would know, but I can't remember why they didn't have it the next year.
So you won.
Yeah.
Which meant you went to nationals in Akron. Tell us a little bit about that. I mean, you go up there for some time, and there's stuff
we
going
were
on,
there
so.
a week. You go to Derby camp, so it's really cool because when you show up, from the minute you get there to the minute you leave, you're treated like a champ. That's what they call you. They either call you champ or they call you by your city. So when we got there, we were brought in a convertible with police escorts one by one. And so in town, they had High Point on one pole, and it was just really a big deal where everybody was individualized. So when I came, I was supposed to bring things indicative of High Point with me, and then candy. So when you're checked in, you throw out the candy. But what I brought from High Point, and I'm not sure if you are aware of this, they used to be the flyback paddle producers. So we gave those. We went over and they gave us 50 of those. So when you're at camp, there's one day in the middle of the week where everybody meets in a huge field because there were people there. There was a guy from Japan and Germany, the Philippines. So there's pretty much, I think there was at least somebody from every state. And I can't remember specifically, but maybe 20 girls of the whole lot. But anyway, we'd all meet in a field and you bring your particular goodies from your city and you just swap. So everybody swapped. You also had your button, High Point button. And to this day, I've got this box full of things from other countries. Everybody tried to bring something indicative of their region.
What was one of the most interesting things?
I am trying to think, and I wish I had thought more about that. I've got some really cute little things, like from the Philippines. I think baseball. I think we all know that a lot of Major League Baseball players come from the Philippines and other areas like that. But he had a little hand-painted keychain that was a ball bat that had Philippines painted on it. And I just thought that was really cool. But just all kinds of buttons and pens and pads and yeah. So and to be honest with you, the flyback paddle was a big deal. Because at one point you're looking around and everybody's playing with those, and they said on them High Point, North Carolina,
That's
the
great.
manufacturing. So that was pretty cool that we had that option.
That's great. So what else, at nationals, did they have people come in and talk?
We had a lot of celebrities at the time. I think Lauren, you probably don't know him, Lauren Green from Bonanza, which anybody would know, who's a little bit older, a lot older than you, but would know who that is. At the time, there was Bill Russell, who's a big-time NBA, or was, basketball player. So that was another day at camp. All the celebrities would come out, and you'd take pictures and get autographs and meet all those folks. So they were there, and that was always good, to do that. And then, trying to think. So when we got to camp, every day was kind of structured with something. And then on Thursday, you went to the track for a trial run. And then on Friday was a huge inspection. And then Saturday was the race. So there's a lot of people at the track that day. And because I was down inside the car, you can't really hear. But so you can't hear the crowd, is I guess my point. I raced the Akron guy in one heat, and that was the only time that I could actually hear people hollering and screaming and stuff. And I did beat him, so yay. But a cool thing, and I'm sure you probably have heard this from maybe some of the other drivers, but Chevrolet sponsored it for years and years, but they had scholarships. So the top 9 people received scholarships from Chevrolet, and I came in 10th place, which is fine. It was all fun, but it was just kind of interesting to be one out of the scholarships.
So close.
Yeah, it was fun. And then the girl from Chapel Hill was in 7th. So that was the first girl, I think, to be in the top 10.
I think it would be the first girl, that was
right,
there.
because that would be the first year.
Mhm,
So I
mhm.
remember that specifically.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and it took a few more years before a girl won.
Right.
The full race, but that
Yeah.
is great. So, someone
Yeah.
made it in the
Yeah, it was
top
really
top
cool.
9 for sure.
Because that is
Yeah.
what we tended to do too, was hang
Mhm.
out with the people from North Carolina.
Mhm.
And like I mentioned before, you'd call, hey Charlotte, hey Greenville. Everybody was called by their city,
Mhm.
and everywhere we went were the police escorts and the sirens, and it was just a really cool time for a kid to feel so special like that. And then the race itself was just a lot of fun. It really was.
And did it feel a lot faster in Akron compared to the race in High Point?
Definitely, yeah. The one in Akron, we were probably going maybe 10 miles over than we were here in High Point. And I think we had mentioned before too, so many of those heats. In High Point you had 2 lanes. In Akron there were 3. And you would have 3 cars coming down that were literally neck and neck. And there were photo finishes all day long. So they had a camera that came down. And a lot of people literally won by inches their heats. That's how equally based these cars were as far as being competitive with each other.
And one thing I forgot to ask, High Point race, do you remember where the race was?
Yeah, and I was trying to think of the name of the road, but it's over behind Walmart. If you come down 68 right before you get to Main Street, there's a side road that goes behind Walmart and the car dealership. Right, and that used to be a movie theater right there on the corner, but I think it might be a restaurant now. And that road wasn't very steep at all. Akron was pretty steep, yeah. Which was fun, because you're like, wow, we really are going fast now.
And how, was there a way that you could practice before?
We actually went over, there was a hill in High Point that we used to go practice on.
Okay.
Yeah, because I did have some challenges in the beginning, driving straight. And when you're in a derby or in a race, everything matters. So if you veer off here, you lose speed. So you really had to be straight. So it took a while to learn how to drive straight, but yeah, we had a place we went to and practiced.
So I have to know, did you keep any, memorabilia from, your race times?
Yeah, I actually have a lot of stuff. We still have the car. I have a helmet. We wore these funky little hats at Derby Camp that had they look almost like a jester's hat. And we wore those. It had our little number and our city on them. So you wore those every day, all day, and that's kind of how you were identified. I kept a lot of the things, obviously, from when we had our little gathering with the other racers to trade your wares. I have a lot of that stuff. Lots and lots of articles and booklets and photos and stuff.
Very cool. Very cool. So what do you think you gained, being a part of these races?
Well, besides a really amazing memory, I mean, it really is. It's one of the most fun things I did in childhood. But probably on the learning side, I learned a whole lot to this day. If I walk by anything that smells like fiberglass, I'm like, I know that smell. Just learning tools and how to actually use tools. I mean, literally, all of them. From we were sanding, screwdrivers, hammers, every tool that as a 14-year-old girl, especially in that time frame, you wouldn't really know what they are. So that was kind of a big deal for me. And to this day, I still remember things about how it was built and the tools that are used.
That's great. And then, I know this tradition is kind of continued with your family. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, we heard somewhere in the early 90s that the Derby was still around at Hobby Park in Winston-Salem. So we just kind of checked into it, and my brother was the first one who his son decided to race one year, and they had 2 levels. They had what they call master cars, which are the ones that you build however you'd like to design, and then they had kit cars, and the kit cars were all exactly the same. They already came built in this huge plastic, and then you could do whatever to tweak, but they were all the same. So he was in the master division and went to Akron. He actually got seventh place, but that was in the early 90s. My nephew went. We all went too. And then the following 2 years, our daughters went, and they were in the kit cars. But they did the same thing. You know, they raced over there, and then they went to Akron. And it wasn't quite as exciting, I don't think, as it was back in the day, but it was still, because they had a lot less than, I think back then it was really a big deal in our country, a part of Americana, I think. But they really did have a good time at camp and racing at the track. And there was one girl from Ventura, California that raced with my daughter. I raced with her mother. So she was there, and we actually, I have that picture somewhere. I recognized her name, the girl's name. So, of course, went over and met the mom. And, you know, this little blonde-headed girl that I remember, not that little, but little blonde-headed girl, and she was, you know, her daughter reminded me of what I remembered. But I thought that was really cool to run into a mom who was doing the same thing we were, just kind of continuing the tradition.
And again, the first year that girls were even allowed, so
yeah,
you know,
exactly. There weren't that
that's
many
even more.
there.
That's great. Yeah. Okay. So your nephew and then your two daughters.
Correct.
That's great. And anyone else in your family that raced?
No, we would have gone on probably after that, but they dissolved the race in Winston. So because, I mean, we still have a son that could have raced, and my brother had a son that to this day is like, why didn't I race? But yeah, no, that was kind of it too, as far as that. It's a pretty expensive venture for folks, and I don't know that they felt like they could maintain the expenses of the Derby. But when they have, the hill over in High Point was pretty awesome. I don't know if you're familiar with Hobby Park. They do a lot of biking over there, and people play with remote control airplanes and stuff. But the track is pretty cool. And then all the way down the track are American flags, so it reminds you of how it was in Akron. It's a whole big Americana, again, kind of thing.
Well, is there anything else, you know, that you remember or that, you know, would like to speak on?
Just, I think maybe just kind of hitting on the point again that it was a pretty cool experience for a kid to go through. There was a lot there, and to see the girls do the same thing was pretty awesome. Yeah, it was really, really cool. Yeah. And so every year it's usually, I think Akron's usually the first week in August, and you can actually now with the internet and everything the way it is, you can actually go on YouTube and find the race and stuff. So it's pretty cool. I think it's still very much a family thing where you see families go through maybe all their kids or cousins or whatever. It is a family thing at this point. I think it always has been, but it's a tradition, I think, for people. But it's great memories.